So first of all, what is the hero's journey? So in a nutshell, the hero's journey is an archetypal narrative framework that underlies the stages many heroes undergo during the course of their adventures in myths and stories that span all cultures and all time periods. So it is a concept that was brought to the popular understanding by a mythologist by the name of Joseph Campbell in his work, The Hero with a Thousand Faces. So it's good to remember that this template is not a rigid structure that every story must follow precisely, but it serves as a flexible guide. If you were to think about movies that you've seen, books that you've read, stories from all over the world, they basically follow a certain type of pattern that underlies the story structure. And this is what Joseph Campbell identifies as the hero's journey. So let's get into a few different quotes by Joseph Campbell. The first one is regarding the function of myth. And he says that it has always been the prime function of mythology and rite to supply the symbols that carry the human spirit forward in counteraction to those constant human fantasies that tend to tie it back. In fact, it may very well be that the high or very high incidence of neuroticism among ourselves follows from the decline among us of such effective spiritual aid. He says, we remain fixated to the unexercised images of our infancy and hence disinclined to the necessary passages of our adulthood. So this quote is basically encapsulating the idea that the function of mythology is to carry us forward, is to help with our evolution in counteraction to the forces that tend to hold us back. Another quote by Joseph Campbell that speaks to the idea that the hero's journey is basically an inward or inner journey goes like this. He says, the passage of the mythological hero may be over ground incidentally. Fundamentally, however, it is inward into depths where obscure resistances are overcome and long lost forgotten powers are revivified to be made available for the transfiguration of the world. So basically what he's saying here is that the hero's journey, essentially, even though it may speak on the surface of an adventure that some hero takes above ground, maybe, like there is a landscape that he traverses, or he goes into space, as in the case of Star Wars or something like that, even though there is a journey, like a physical journey that is undertaken, fundamentally that journey is an inner journey. It's an inward journey into those places where the real resistances are overcome and we find the lost powers that we have forgotten. So even though these may take place symbolically in an outward fashion, essentially it's an inner journey. And here's another quote by Joseph Campbell that speaks to the idea that this is a universal template. This is not something that is reserved for a certain group of people or a certain culture or a certain time period. He says, whether the hero be ridiculous or sublime, Greek or barbarian, Gentile or Jew, his journey varies little in essential plan. Popular tales represent the heroic action as physical. The higher religions show the deed to be moral. Nevertheless, there will be found astonishingly little variation in the morphology of the adventure, the character roles involved, the victories gained. So, in other words, what he's saying is that it doesn't matter if it's a tragedy or it's a comedy. It doesn't matter if it takes place in this country or that country or whatever time period it may be. This is a universal archetypal pattern. So, in other words, this is a pattern that speaks to us all on a very deep level. Okay, irregardless of where we come from and our culture and our time period in which we live. He also says that the major stages of the hero's journey follow a certain sequence of events that mirror what are called rites of passage. And so he says here in this quote, the standard path of the mythological adventure of the hero is a magnification of the formula represented in the rites of passage. Think about rites of passage as those rituals that are undergone by traditional cultures in which members of the society are able to level up from one level of maturity or infancy into a higher level of maturity and responsibility. So the stages of rites of passage are those of separation, initiation, and return. It's a cyclical pattern that takes place starting in separation, in which from the known, comfortable, everyday world, that member of the clan or the tribe is put into an initiation or a transformation, which is the unknown world in which the member of the society is thrust in order for him or her to undergo a certain transformation or initiation whereby that person returns to the known world at a higher level of skill or consciousness. So once again, our rites of passage are the underlying threefold structure that the hero's journey is modeled after. So when we think of the hero's journey, we want to think of rites of passage.